Hey, first conversation of the year. We're back January 9th, so got some time off. I didn't go anywhere, but it was super nice to not work for a little bit. So how about you, man?
Yeah, same. Yeah, new year. So we'll see where that takes us. Might be a little shaky with our jobs getting replaced by AI, but we'll see.
Yeah, which I know we're going to talk about today. We're already just kind of rumbling. It was crazy how busy in terms of news, just with the headlines. Gosh, I got them here. You know, so Nvidia did the Acquihire, like bought Grok for inference, really like an executive hire. Meta acquired Manus, which is like estimated 100 million ARR 9 months into the life of their company, and that's a Chinese startup. And then there's one other big one. It's X, just it's like valued at 230 billion with their next raise. So it's just like holy smokes. And yeah, and then those podcasts that we were, there's been a lot of podcasts around AI editors and a lot of news out there, but just we finally listened to the one on, I've gone from 10 sales reps to 1.25 or 1.2. So we got to listen to that, and it's kind of like an oh shit moment, like, you know. And then Claude Code is in the zeitgeist. They even made it on the AI Daily Brief podcast. So yeah, it's interesting times for sales, marketing, and GTM professionals out there trying to figure out what the fuck is up in 2026. So the good news is growth is still going to be a focus. So we'll see how much is vaporware, I guess. I don't know, man. What was your take on all the headlines coming out of the holidays?
Yeah, it was like I was sharing, like there's, I talked to one of our engineers and his thesis on why the echo chamber like amplified on Claude Code was, everybody sort of took some PTO or had some downtime and finally got to experiment with, vibe coding or Claude Code. And, you know, they saw them, I guess we call it the magic or the art of the possible in real time. And so needed to talk about it. So that's, I think, part of the amplification. So yeah, it's pretty amazing where we're at. I mean, I played around, with that, and I've been playing around with Lovable a lot lately, and the 0 to MVP is like, one shot, 10 minutes now versus something that,
Right.
yeah, previously you'd be like, oh, I've got an idea, let me wireframe it. It'll bring in some engineers, and then we're gonna apply to YC or Techstars and hopefully get like going. And now it's just like, hey, here's an example, and this is what I'd like it to do, and these are like the tone and narrative I want to go. And it's like, boop.
It's crazy. I did, and I think I've talked about this before, but just a simple flashcard app is kind of like is my litmus test for all this stuff. And yeah, so I signed up for Claude. And no, so I think I have GPT, Gemini, and Claude. Pay $20 a month. I don't do the 200 stuff. And so I can just kind of compare and contrast, and I'll often just copy and paste just all the same prompts and see what it is. But yeah, Claude Code was really impressive. Installed it. I had to go back and just kind of refresh all my Git stuff, tokens, and things of that nature, so I could like push it up. But it took, yeah, maybe 10 minutes. It was kind of a paragraph prompt, and then I think there were 3 bugs. And I just fed it back in, and then bam, it worked. I was like, that's pretty slick. So it's a little terrifying. So
Yeah, there's this like, we're hiring for marketing growth content, and the individual, without even being prompted or asked for it, came to the interview um, with a vibe code of, this like cost benefit, analysis, and it's like legit, like toggles. It's really impressive, and he's a marketer, right? But it doesn't matter if you're a marketer or sales. But just the fact that he took the agency to do that and just was like, hey, this is an idea I had, and this is how I would use it as like a lead capture. It was like, that is impressive.
that was somebody that was just interviewing at your company?
Yeah, yeah. And he just brought it to the interview and like, hey, I want to show you this. It's like,
Wow.
it didn't ask me. There wasn't like any like impromptu or saying, hey, can you, provide an example of like, you know, a lead capture or anything. It was just like, oh, hey, this is like a growth mechanism I thought of. and I would use it, and this is how I would use it, and this is what the page looks like. And before you could like maybe articulate that during a conversation, like, oh, I have this idea. So, but he was like, oh, here's the idea and here's it fully functional.
And that was with Claude Code or Lovable. I
Yeah.
don't know that it really matters,
Yeah.
but Claude Code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Yeah. So that's cool. That's crazy. Well, let's jump into our first headline story. So we're just going to talk, kind of break this down. So Lenny, the great podcast with Jason Lepkin, who leads Saster. I think he's a co-founder of Saster, maybe CEO. I forget his exact title, but the headline here is Jason says we replace our sales team with 20 AI agents, and here's what happens. So definitely an interesting. That was actually a long podcast. I think it was like an hour and 40 minutes. But so just to take a quick step back, Saster, which I think the context is important, kind of has two main buyers. So I'm not doing them a great service here on the description of their business, but it's kind of like I guess it's a B2B community of a bunch of different like startup founders and connecting, and they host events. And so a lot of their business is around raising sponsors for the events and then selling tickets to these events. And so, so you've kind of got two main product categories, right? So more of a B2C play, high volume, high transaction on the ticket side. And then you've kind of got the larger deal based, a little bit more enterprise sale where you'd want to kind of go get the whales, the Vercells, or whatever is Lovables, Clays of the world to sponsor the headline of this conference. And so his anecdote here was he had like two sales reps and he's done this multiple times where they showed up to the conference and quit same day of the conference and said, "Hey, peace out." And he just turned to, I guess, one of his lead executives. He said, "We're done hiring salespeople. I'm not doing this again. I'm not training up new people and young just for them to leave me at like the worst possible time." And I guess they'd had some automations out there, and they one agent or one chatbot had actually closed like a deal on its own. So they said, "We're going to double down." So I'll tell you kind of the end up front. So they've got one account executive that just does all the deals. And then they have 20 agents that are doing triaging, demand gen, inbound, following up on like, reactivation, cold, warm, all that for the audience. And then they've got the point two is actually their chief AI architect. And that is the overhead for the investment on the orchestration. And so, he said there's actually, it's not set and forget it. We couldn't just turn it on, so you really do have to have somebody that's looking over the quality responses. And I think they started with support and kind of went up the ladder in terms of more sales driven approach. And I don't know if I would say that they're fully like agent sales because everything still goes through one account executive, but it's pretty amazing that essentially they're saying they're at parity in terms of performance. They're not better, they're not worse, but they've got the same head count or lower head count. And then I'm assuming the agent fully loaded cost is cheaper than whatever they were paying the people before. So that's kind of the backdrop of what it is. But I don't know, man. What were your kind of key takeaways from this of hour
yeah,
and 40-minute podcast?
I think the key one, and I've held this belief just even outside of the AI, like, being the salesperson is like people don't like to be sold to, right? And people, that's why like Amazon itself does so well, like just as like you can go buy stuff and you don't have to talk to anybody, right? Like, and
Yeah.
he made the example of, the one sales agent they have is basically a qualifying agent. So for those not in the sales role, you always want to like qualify your leads so that you can pass them on to your account executive so that they have, the qualifications to become an actual customer. Not that it's just somebody like kicking the tires, but he made the point like, oh, our bot, our sales agent, or our sales bot is qualifying these. And then he asked Lenny, he's like, what would you rather talk to, a human who's qualifying you or the bot? And Lenny was like, oh, the bot for sure. So it was just like
Yeah.
interesting that like, and I sometimes see it, and no knock to people who will see this that maybe went through loops with me, but like there's authentic salespeople and then there's salespeople who try really hard. And those are the ones that people don't like to talk to, is the people who just try to be real salesy.
Yeah. I would agree. I think that for me, the context is really key here because I think I think Jason would agree with this. I think most people would agree with it. So some of these sound bites are, won't be applicable to all sales roles or, demand gen roles, right? So just, I know I'm stating the obvious here, but what I mean by that is just to take one extreme is enterprise. So 100% agree. Man, when I know what I want and I just want to transact, I just have a few questions. And he gave a great example where he wanted to buy a $10,000 contract. He was in London. The vendor was in California. He's like, just send over the contract if you can answer these two questions. Rather than just answering the two questions and shipping the contract, they had some internal step function qualification where I've gone through this when I was at a small SMB and trying to buy from Salesforce. It's like, no, no, no. Well, we have a checkbox where, we have to have one of your C executives on the phone. And I was trying to buy 5 fucking seats of Salesforce. Like we're talking like $1,000 a month, right? And like I couldn't even get, basic kind of terms. So it's just like, why? Why would I do that? So, there's so many that you don't, but then on the other extreme, this week alone, you know, nothing pisses off my customers more, it depends on the customer, is like they come in with a question and then we send them a bunch of, here's 20 links to AWS documentation, figure it out yourself, right? So there's the other side of this complex. Tell me what's going on. I need some nuance here. I want to talk to somebody versus like, let me just buy my fucking $10,000 contract and move on. Just answer these questions. So I do think that's important, and that's kind of why I opened up with like you've got the ticket sales, you've got the sponsorships, and those may be different from the people out there listening to this. It's not. I don't know that it's going to replace all sales agents everywhere for every product.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I do think to your example, like with the customer friction that you mentioned, like, and I feel bad too. And I'm like, well, here's 10 links, go troubleshoot it yourself. I think there is a point in the near future, and probably is already here too. It's just like, being able to have the broad probe, like an AI probe, like, oh, what are you running into? Whether, whatever the issue is. And the bot will be a SME, so subject matter expert, and be able to probe like, oh, have you tried this? Okay, no. And some of that exists like when you call like Comcast or Spectrum now, you're like, my internet won't work. And it's like, oh, did you try this? And you're like, yes. Like,
Have you unplugged, waited 60 seconds and plugged it back in? Yes, I have. Please let me talk to an adult.
yes. But I think it'll get there too for like your enterprise support, because sometimes too, like an engineer might not want to talk to like a sales guy who's then got to bring in an SA.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, yeah, that goes back to a lot of the data. If they, I think it comes back to the complexity, right? So if you've done 1,000 implementations or migrations of the same workload, then there's whole frameworks and experience, and you've got 90% covered. Pump that into a chatbot and let it go. If it's any nuance, like I don't know if I would be, yeah, chatting with somebody like best practices from Claude or Gemini on rolling out a brand new service feature in an agentic application. I'm not saying there isn't value there, but it's like, man, it'd be really nice to talk to somebody over at Anthropic right about now, before I release this into production. And so it's all there. It all depends, so, but one of the things, so he did, so some of this is sensationalized, but he's like, I think, he's like, what SDR would want to, if I gave him a list of 10,000 contacts, would want to reach out to all of them? He's like, nobody. And it's like, I think that's a little unfair, but I do agree. Nobody's going to want to do that. I don't want to do that. But as an owner, you don't want your enterprise, your most expensive resource, a salesperson, doing that either. You want to focus on the high touch, the things that require those skill sets. So there was another quote from the CEO of Zapier where there's like economically valueless tasks for humans that become valuable if you have an agent, because they can work 24/7. They can do the rote things. They don't get bored. It's pennies or less than pennies to execute this. It's a total fit. So just a couple kind of things for the audience, like people to say. One is Jason's hypothesis is it's going to kill the mediocre, right? So the takeaway here, in my opinion, was like, you want to be high agency. You want to get familiar with the tools that are given to you, and you want to figure out how you can do more, with what you've got than you did before, right? And I think, just showing up is going to get harder and harder for anything that is it's pretty straightforward. But he, at the same time, he caveated that he said, if I had two great humans, I'd hire him tomorrow. I wouldn't put him, I wouldn't replace my agents, but I still have a really strong need for smart people with high agency to go figure stuff out. So I don't know that it means the end of jobs as much as, automation of a lot of these tasks where it makes sense. At least that was my kind of key takeaway.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we've talked about this before, and I wasn't talking about engineer because I was asking him what his thoughts on like, you know, the placement of, entry level engineers. Cause that's also in like the Claude zeitgeist right now is like, and this, elimination of the SDR. So there's like two things like, okay, then how do you become an AE if you don't go through the maturation of being an SDR? So who are the future AEs, right? Like if we just nuke SDRs altogether, I'm not going to just go hire somebody who's never been an AE to come be an AE, right? But I'll hire like an SDR who's been in the trenches and okay, I could groom you up, right? I could like help you like move to the next level. And then also though, like to your point, like the mediocre are going to be eliminated. And I think we have to, we have to become orchestrators because I don't think we can fight this forcing function that, to your point, like I don't need to hire an SDR to email my 30,000, database and go cold prospect, this bot can do it, but previously you would hire an SDR to do that. But now we just need to be better orchestrators. And yeah, it is sort of like concerning for the people who are entry level or mediocre. It's like, what do they do? Where do they fit in?
Yeah. So you shared that tweet from, I think wrote this down as Rohan Anil. I think he got 1 million views on his one Twitter post of him saying, I'm moving from Google DeepMind to Anthropic or something. And I think his comment was essentially, if I had access to this, and obviously this is a very high agency person. And what I mean by that is, someone who, if given a tool set's going to act on their own, right? They're not going to, they have to be told. So just given the resources they have, they're going to go try to figure things out and solve problems or take action is the best way to put that. And he essentially said, I think, look, if I had this, it would have taken my first 6 years of quote unquote junior development experience learning curve and compressed that into less than a year. I think maybe he even said months. So I don't disagree. It is concerning when you just wipe out the bottom layer of your whole like feeder model. I just, I think there's also, you could make the argument that maybe there are other skill sets given the new paradigm of orchestrating agents, thinking differently. Maybe it's less about dealing with rejection and more about understanding your products or having empathy, right? Maybe just there's a different feeder system for quote unquote account executives going forward, giving the new paradigm. And it kind of an interesting point was he mentioned later in the podcast was like, look, every SaaS company out there, at least the ones that are backed by VCs, are going to go into the enterprise. So they may have product market fit now, and that may be getting them to 100 million. At some point, they will want to and have to cross the chasm into enterprise. And that's going to require more GTM folks, more field sales, a CRO, and those sales cycles are more expensive. And so then they're not all going to survive. And so it's kind of interesting. It's like agent everything, but then once you want to get $1 billion, you're gonna have to hire a bunch of enterprise expensive sales reps. So it's a messy world, which again it goes back to like I think focusing on what tools you have available and being good at that, being high agency, and being in the top quartile of your performance, at least in terms of like functional and always learning, is your best bet here.
100%. Yeah. Learn and be curious.
Which brings me to this kind of mental model I really thought was cool. This comes on the marketing side. So where we at? We're at. So it's called the pie shape, higher pie shaped marketers, not T shaped. So the old T shape was, an inch deep, I think, in a mile wide. And then you also have one area that you go a mile deep on. And I couldn't couldn't find anything on sales in terms of this, but the mental model I think can apply. So in this marketing, the marketing generalist is the top layer. And then there are three areas, branding content is one bucket, product marketing is another, growth marketing is the third area. And so basically, can you pick two? They've got nice categories for this on which are your two that are go deep. And then you have to be essentially AI savvy on everything else. And so I think that's a good mental model to look at from any profession in sales in general. Because one thing I can identify with was if I could find three things that I'm really good at in sales, that'll really differentiate me from my peers and with my customers. And what I mean by that is more around functional skills. So for me right now is I really understand cloud. I really understand independent software vendors or companies that build technology and software as a service. And then I'm also focused on the security industry. So what does that mean? So, essentially I know what the security stack is for the enterprise. I understand, the key personas and the key value propositions and needs of that market. So then I sell to ISVs who build security solutions for that market. And so I understand a SaaS provider, but specific to security, who they are targeting and what they're trying to build and the needs, kind of like a vertical. If you understand retail or manufacturing, right? You understand this, I understand security. And then the cloud is kind of the horizontal technology play. So if you can find two or three in that Venn diagram, there's just not going to be a lot of you out there. And then you can kind of fill in the gaps with a lot of the other AI stuff, and we could even swap in like executive management. So some people, I've got a guy that's on my team, broader team. He's fantastic at executive stakeholder management. That's one of his superpowers. But he's not as technical. And so like, you just kind of swap that out. And so still a great three-legged stool of what makes him different and special, but it's different from everybody else. So I think there's a lot of optionality there. So I don't know. That's my thing that's kind of worked for. And if you can get to three, you're very unique, in my opinion. If you're really, really good at of three things, then you're truly differentiated in the market. So
Yeah. I mean, I think that hits harder than ever. I mean, previously it was just like, oh, you know, be good at one, but like, I think now with the way the world's going, I mean, I think you nailed it. And I think that's the way to like I guess you would say future proof without, you know, within your current role without worrying about a side hustle. Right.
yeah,
Like,
well said.
cause you can do the side hustle, but you should still be very dynamic within your current role. And I think, and it's just like the skill set that needs to be there.
Yeah, I 100% agree, man. So just in case, just in case you think leadership has it all figured out, there's another great article with the CEO of Zapier, and I think it was on Lenny too. And so he had some interesting thoughts. So what caught my eyes here was, so Zapier is the automation platform, Make as well, N8N, all those kind of cool things. And so he had his tech stack. It was Zapier as kind of the core, and some meeting notes, and then some LLMs. But he says it's labeled a delegation trap. I see a lot of CEOs fall into the delegation trap. They write an AI memo, then they ask their exec team, who asks a director, that asks that poor IC, individual contributor, is like, am I figuring this out for the whole company? So I don't, Doom, I don't know if you can relate at all, but it's like, yeah, AI is the future. And I think this came up in the surveys. Executives were very bullish on all of the AI productivity gains, their organizations and strategies. And then you go and you survey the actual people in the field, and they're like, I mean, it was like 20-point difference, like 25% to 45%. Like it was not even on the same page, in terms of like how effective this stuff is. And so I just take that grain of salt. Like you always feel like you're getting left behind. The top brass is still figuring this shit out too, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think it goes along with like everybody just has recently, well, not recently, but it's like you change the semantics of like what you do. Cause like, Apollo, for those that have worked in sales, know what Apollo is for like data and data enrichment. Like it's like Apollo AI now. And like outreach is outreach AI now.
What
Like,
does that even mean? It's
But it's
exhausting.
AI, so you slap the AI on it. And so it's the same with like executives. Like, yes, we're building with AI. Of course, we're leveraging AI. Like, so it almost is like just to play into that. Like, their vendors have to now say be AI so that they can go to other leadership, and be like, yeah, my org is using AI. Like, we're definitely using AI.
If we're AI in the shit out of this, we got AI peanut butter all over the strategy talk. We're
Pretty much.
crushing it. Little Nutella. The so one of the most mentally interesting observations or comments that I took from Jason's podcast from Saster is he says the entire market is open. And I was like, what does he mean by that? And he went on to explain it. But essentially, all these AI products have kind of opened the door for all enterprises because of the FOMO of like AI, the AI productivity innovation wave is we're just going to get left behind. So we have to like go, and nobody knows exactly what good looks like, right? We lost the data, we lost the analytics, or we lost the Web 2.0, the 3.0, so we can't miss on this one. And so you have this like everyone's kind of open everything. We're gonna read docs, we're gonna RFIs, RFPs across. So like Salesforce is under pressure. Should we be building our own CRM? Should we be looking at an AI first CRM? Should we be looking at Salesforce Agent Force? Okay, that's just that stack. It's like, okay, well, now we're looking at code. We've got GitHub Copilot, but like, should we be looking at Cursor? Should we look at Claude Code, Open Codex, Amazon Kiro, Amazon Q Developer? Just go down the list. So he says there's this interesting window where not everyone's going to make it out alive, where everything is on the table from like a procurement. All functions are evaluating all tools in terms of like build, keep, migrate, buy. And he's just like, it's not sustainable, right? Because the enterprise can only handle so much change, and there's only so much change management. There's only so much budget, but change management, I think, humans are the real bottleneck. They're just going to get fatigued and be like, look, we made our bet. We have to stick to it. We just got to see this through because there's no value inherently in changing. And to me, that was such an aha moment of like, oh shit, yes, like we have to act in 2026 and get in front of everybody and figure it out because everybody's kind of open for business in terms of like being sold to. But once they're shut, they're going to be it's going to go back to, I think it's going to, the pendulum's going to swing the other way. They're going to be kind of closed for business for much longer versus these rolling contract cycles of every, 12, 18, 24, 36 months. It's just going to be, it might be like a 24-hour ice out period, which could be really interesting for either the VCs because all the SaaS providers get churn and just like die, or the larger firms get iced out and they can't upsell, cross sell, and so they see slower top line growth. I just thought it was a fascinating observation I had not thought about or seen.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's scary too, though, because then like we keep talking about like the advancement of the tools and how many people get displaced and how many of the tools actually work. And then to your point, like for the SaaS that don't survive or the enterprise that can't adopt or, adapt, excuse me. Yeah. Like what happens to those humans that are in those roles?
Yeah, I think they're going to go away. But I,
Scary.
yeah, it's so I think it comes back to how fast the transformation happens, right? So this is what I'd heard. It's if it happens slow enough where people can adjust to some degree and you can pivot, that's much better than like step function overnight. Like industrial revolution, the machine comes out, it can produce, 100 candles per minute versus 100 candles per day. You can't adjust. So it's hard to say where we're going to fall, but I think there's just going to be enough human bottlenecks here. And the AI is not AGI. There's a lot of talk out in the community around like, you know, it's like neurosymbiotic AI, which is kind of a blend of the current stochastic hallucinating with more deterministic systems and how they play better together. It sounds super sexy on a white paper. They haven't figured that shit out either. So I don't know, man. There's a lot of hype cycle. I think you can have this AI bubble, so to speak, or all this capex being spent makes sense because it does. Like we're already in the new paradigm, right? Like I Google things and I go into AI mode all the time. We're not going back, and that just uses more compute. That's just less efficient, and Google's going to spend that money to keep their ad mode, right? Like, and we are. I think the benefits will translate more on productivity immediately, but so I don't think it's like a bubble in the sense of it's worthless money. There's still revenue, but I don't know that there's going to be this like what is the Terminator Skynet tomorrow, ruling us either. So
Yeah, we're definitely not going back. Like I mentioned, I had talked to one of our engineers, and we were just talking shop like this about like what his view is, or what he thinks, of Claude and other tools. And he said, mentioned it, it's just pure productivity gains. Like it's hard. He said it's hard to quantify, but he knows just from what he's able to, string together, that definitely more efficient and more productive in the actual like work he's doing. So like quantifying it, like, yeah, he couldn't quantify it, but he can guarantee that, it's adding value. Claude Code and the other tools that he's using. So your point,
yeah,
like we're not going back. It's not like, oh, didn't work out. Like, you know,
yeah,
nobody's getting e-commerce.
yeah. I forget the future is here. It's just unevenly distributed, but yeah, the future is here. So that brings me. So all these, it's funny because it's all these things can be true. A lot of this discussion is and not or, in my opinion. And what I mean by that, so the cost of producing code has gone down, and the immediate reaction is that makes the software engineer less valuable. It's like, okay, well, not if every competitor can now produce the same amount of software with the same number of humans, right? So here's a little bit more of a marketing example. So there's some marketing newsletter. They did a conference that goes online. And so as the cost to produce content reaches zero or goes down, that means you can produce more content, which means everyone's producing more content, which then means that the difficulty of standing out in the sea of content is now harder. And so the same problem of being noticed and there's still the same number of customers out there. There's still the same number of buyers, like, and everyone's trying to reach them. So just magically 10xing your content, if all your competitors are doing that, it's not going to work, right? So there's going to be a distribution curve on that. People are moving faster, figure it out. But it's just as the bar, the goal line's shifting as all these efficiency gains trickle out through the different functions in the market, in my opinion. So it's, and I would say it's Jason says it's not an easy button. We're not at Staples, like boop, go, boop. It's so he talked about most of these AI agents are 80 to 100,000 per year. And
Yeah.
and so he emphasized like you've got to get somebody who's in the boat with you in terms of a vendor, who's gonna help you on board, who's gonna help you get the data in. You're gonna have to then have your own people tweak it. So it's you know, again, he said after all of this, he's basically kind of a like, breaking even. He just doesn't have to deal with the heartburn of dealing with reps. So I wouldn't say that, just buying an agent solves your problem easier. It's not like, oh, I got a car and it works now and it works perfectly. It's like, no, it's not if you want it to be a race car and you want to race, you still have to know what you're doing. So,
Yeah. Just a complete side note though, one of the examples he gave, one of the companies, I believe it was like Qualified. It's one of those things where you and I were like, oh, we should build something that does this sales motion. And it's like, well, they did it. And like, he's paying them and using them. And so for those listening, if you have an idea, like this is that moment too, to like, just go vibe code it or try to do it. Cause that may be the business's open opportunity for you.
yeah, it's so real because towards the end, he had this thing like, your current startup is your best startup. And I think he's talking more to the founders. It's like, turn whatever, even if you're burnt out, just turn this into whatever startup you want to be because we're so early. Like, yeah, you might not be the next chat GPT because that moment's already passed, but we're so early in this, like, just go do it. So to your point, the tools are there. Just have the agency, do it every day, get atomic habits, read the book, develop, understand, you know, spend 15 minutes a day, and dude, at the end of the month, you'll be amazed. And I always go back to this, 10,000 hours to master something is the wrong mental model. Like that's great for, if you're going to be a professional or whatever. It's 20 hours. You need to get to 20 hours as soon as possible, whatever domain, to be functionally capable, which is so manageable. It's 45 minutes a day within a month. Like just set those goals and you'd be shocked how far you can get. And it's yeah, if you put it out there, it's gonna happen more often. Like, yeah, dude, there's another person. It's like most people in life aren't even trying to win. So just put in the effort and you'll be fine.
100%. Yeah. It's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah, exactly. So, oh man. Well, that kind of brings me to like the end of my punch list. I mean, anything else top of mind or coming up here in the next month? We're supposed to get our all of our details by end of Jan on how good or bad 2026 will be in terms of sales. So, I've
Dude, just remember business is open. So whatever it is, if it's good or bad, just keep that mantra that this is your window.
exactly, yeah. When in doubt, reach out.
Yeah.
Just, action's always better than inaction. You don't get anything from not doing something. So, and the risk of doing something is very low. So,
Yeah.
100% agree. Yeah. And find an AI tool and start playing with it.
100%.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that wraps us for today. So we'll see you next week. Peace.
Peace.